Good morning, everyone, and today we're continuing on in our view of the Pop Cross series, A Summoner's Beast. For today's episode, Brawl of the Sea Monsters. If you remember last time, the main man that had the summoner, I can't remember his name, it's escaping me right now, was given a challenge. 5 of his monsters would battle against 5 of the Archon Demon's monsters, and the winner gets to stay or become the overseer of that realm. Today, I'm guessing we're going to see the first of those beasts. Maybe it's the first of the 5, or maybe it's the first few of the 5. Either way, let's hop in.
I thought I heard the old Johnny Lever. Tomorrow ye will get your pay, and it's time for us to leave her. I heard these words floating out over the open ocean as I approached the vessel I sought. I was uncertain who it was in Captain Darable's crew singing, until I got close enough to see the man steering the ship. Leave her, Johnny, leave her.
Oh, the previous
leave
overseer of the
her,
realm.
Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is long and the
That's a big old beetle.
winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. I was quite surprised to see that the man singing was the former overseer of my world, Eulytus. I'd never taken him for the singing type, or one to do much of anything I considered to be pleasant activity, and yet
Dude's got a full-on beard.
here he was singing to himself as he sailed the ship on an elsewise quiet night. The melody was repetitive enough that I quickly learned the lyrics, and decided to announce my presence in the sky upon my dragon Mount Violet by taking over the song and singing a verse myself. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. I'll leave her, Johnny, leave her.
Ain't nothing better than some good old-fashioned sea shanties.
The winds won't blow, oh, it's time for us to leave her. As I'd started in, Eulytus had glanced up and given a slight nod. Violet landed down on the deck and I dismounted. Eulytus then said, "A bit flat, but not bad for an amateur vocalist, Overseer Tayron." "Thank you. Your voice is quite pleasant as well," I replied. I understood that he'd been attempting to give me an underhanded insult, but I found it more humorous to pretend I thought he was genuinely complimenting me. "What brings you back to the Looney Keener?" he asked, referring to the name of Captain Darable's sea vessel. Before I could answer, a much more jovial voice came bounding up from below deck. "Oh, is that Tayron I hear? So it is. How are you now, bud?"
Okay, so no, it's not the previous overseer who's drawing. He's drawing the captain of the ship.
Been a while since you came out our way, eh? This was who I'd expected to find singing and steering, Captain Trenton A. Darable. "It's good to see you, Captain. I wish I could say I was here simply for a casual visit, but I'm actually in need of some advice." "Well, sure thing, bud. Always happy to help you out of any kerfuffle you get yourself in. What kind of advice are you looking for?" "Well, the advice I need is actually from Eulytus." Eulytus raised an eyebrow at me. We were on mildly good terms now, but he had still been the person who essentially killed my mother and sister when I was a boy.
Damn.
Not to mention my friends had forcibly taken the overseer abilities for this world from Eulytus and given them to me. It was certainly a justified thing to do, all things considered, but it was also understandable why he'd also not be a fan of my...
Is that a plaid pirate's vest? Oh, damn, that is ball
...self, and why coming to him for any sort of guidance was an unusual thing to do. Captain Darable suddenly marched over and playfully pushed Eulytus off the steering. "You hear that, Salty Boots? The big man needs your help, so go give her." "What exactly qualifies him as the big man here?" Eulytus asked, likely referring to himself being a fair amount taller and broader than myself. "He's got bigger spirit than most, bud. Now go on. By the by, Tayron, Gretzky's in the water around here somewhere, if you want to let Violet off to go play with him," Darable said, gesturing to my dragon ally patiently standing by. "She can feel free to if she wishes, but Violet is actually with child at the moment, and needing more rest than usual. Today is likely the last time I'll be riding her off on an adventure. At least for a few years, as she gives birth and raises her young," I said, somewhat somberly, patting her on the neck. "I can just picture the little purple-winged chucks flying about. Alright, well, I'll make sure Gretzky plays general if they go off together. Hey, Gretzky!" Darable stuck 2 fingers in his mouth.
I'm guessing that's the name of this big old beagle. Gretzky. I love it.
And whistled. Seconds later, an oversized, buck-toothed dire beaver head stuck its head out of the water near the ship. "Don't go being a hoser around Violet today, eh, bud?" She's got a bun in the oven, yeah? The beaver replied with a simple "Grrrr,"
I
then dipped
love
back
this
down under the
beaver.
water. After that, Ulysses and I walked down towards the
Love
captain's
it.
quarters to have our chat. We went to his desk, and, while Darable usually grants others his larger, more comfortable chair, unsurprisingly, Ulysses took that for himself, and I sat in the smaller one across from him. So go on then. What's this about? I explained the situation to Ulysses, the Archon demon Fantarel, or Toralai as she was calling herself now, challenging me for the power of the Overseer in this world in what some of my allies from other worlds were referring to as a massively scaled up high-stakes Pokemon battle. Well, I wouldn't have agreed to that, but it doesn't surprise me that you'd be too trusting for your own good. It may seem foolish, but regardless, I've agreed to it now and need the best monster allies I can find to use as summons. Toralai even permitted me to see glimpses of her own monsters, and I'm certain at least one beast I'll need is a water-based creature to challenge a fierce fire beast that she has among her creatures. I figured, along with your many decades as an overseer of this world, paired with you spending the last few years upon this vessel, you may have beneficial insights as to what monster I should seek out. That could be both reliable and powerful. You're being too trusting again, Tayrin. She was probably trying to trick you by showing you her own monsters. If she let you see that she has a fire beast, she probably wants you to choose a water beast to face it, with hers already primed to counter it somehow. Possibly a fire beast that can also shoot ice or perhaps
Lightning?
Electricity. Coincidentally, a monster that has given us trouble lately could be perfect for you. It's a legendary water beast, high durability, speed, strength, and not only can it shoot water at its foes, but it can conduct electricity, better even than many lightning dragons.
Ooh,
it's in a pretty defensive mood right now, but there might be an easy enough way for you to convince it to fight with you. Well, that does sound like a perfect fit. Where can I find it, and what do I need to do to sway it to my side? He stood up and drew the familiar Blade of the Northern Tide from his belt. He started walking from the room, and I got up to follow. We can be there by morning. Hope you're ready for a dragon hunt.
Alright, well, I'm gonna say it. I freaking love this already because big old beetle. I like beevils, okay? If you don't like beevils, leave. Dole's right over there.
Ulysses and I had gone back up to the deck to explain the situation to Darable. Well, if we ain't feeding two birds with one hand here. That Sparky Chuck has been a real fly in the sea for the last few months, as we tried to reach the trade markets of the southern shores. If it helps you two to take that thing away, then that's as good a reason as any to get the tides ripping us out there, eh? The Blade of the Northern Tide, which Kayla and I had aided Darable and his crew in acquiring in exchange for Ulysses' bestiary, allowed the wielder to control the waters around them, and I'd been curious why they'd not been using it to steer and move the ship when I arrived. As it turned out, Darable considered it to be something they should only use when necessary, as disturbing the tides could disrupt the wildlife around them too much. The blade could also attract and repel sea beasts, helping keep their vessels safe, but the creature we now sought had been able to ignore the sway of the blade in favor of protecting the region it resided in. Ulysses explained, The Leo Electrolantra is likely the last of its kind, and as far as I know must have been in hibernation somewhere for decades. Recently, like many other legendary beasts, it has reawakened, but this creature also has the ability to asexually reproduce. It laid 3 eggs just inland on a small island that is unfortunately right in the best route to the southern shore markets, which we try to venture to once a month or so.
Thing put a Godzilla.
I tried repelling the beast with the blade, but it was able to fight through the repulsion to stay by its nest, and has attempted to sink us anytime we've gotten too close. I nodded along. That is all intriguing enough, but what can I do to convince it to align with me for battle? On top of that, what does this quest have to do with a dragon hunt? Oh, I'm seeing the color of this. You think if Tayrin here slays that pesky manta, the Sparky Shark will koozie up to him, eh, salty boots? Ulysses rolled his eyes.
Manta?
Essentially, yes. There is a dragon called a skybound Mantaragon that has been making the...
Okay. So this one is not the creature he's wanting to befriend. This is what he's going to have to defeat. This one is the one he's wanting to befriend.
Mantra all the more defensive. It's a mischievous water dragon that loves to rile up other powerful monsters and goad them into fighting it. Last time we tried passing through the area, we saw the Mantaragon flying near the Lantra's nest, like it was threatening to eat or smash its eggs. Got the thing shooting lightning so far, it charred up the side of our ship from a kilometer away. You kill that thing, use your Overseer abilities to calm the Lantra as best you can, possibly even show it that you can move its eggs to a safer place, then maybe it'll align with you for your battle. I very quickly saw a flaw in Ulysses' plan that I knew he wouldn't have considered, but kept it to myself. A different idea was starting to churn in my mind, but I couldn't be certain it was the right path until after I saw these two sea beasts. With Darable's permission, Ulysses used the Blade of the Northern Tide to turn and dramatically speed up the ship, creating a consistent wave behind us, pushing us along. As we traveled, more of the crew awoke and was informed of our heading. I greeted those I remembered and tried chatting with the fiercest fighter on the ship, a Haudenosaunee warrior woman named Aguaho. She gave me a nod but said nothing as usual. Darable had assured me she could speak, but I had never actually heard it. I also asked Ulysses on our venture what he thought of the idea of me simply making monsters to use in the battle. Well, it wasn't something I'd consistently practiced. As an overseer, I did have the ability to make creatures that could fight with me. He simply scoffed at the idea. That is similarly moronic as allowing an amateur swordsman to make his own blade for battle. Even at my own best, which was likely far better than where you're at now, I wouldn't have trusted myself to make monsters that could face creatures of a demon like the one you've described. Even if you were well skilled at monster forging, creatures from species that have existed for decades or centuries have adapted survival and combat techniques that newly made creatures could not develop so quickly.
Yeah, you can't just create something. You gotta go full Zog. You gotta get the primal beast that have been alive for years.
Don't be arrogant about your skills, Tayrin. You're not better than nature. His advice was noted, but because he was being particularly rude in how he gave it, I replied, "Understood, thank you. Perhaps after I leave you, I'll ask my allies at the Slayers of Cursed Predators what other creatures I should get assistance from." I practically heard his teeth clamp shut and grind against each other. "You work with those insufferable slayers?" Yes, I was untrusting of them at first, but they've become incredible allies, and the inside of their base is wildly vast, with so many incredible, magical creatures contained within. Ulysses was practically steaming with anger. From conversations with the Slayers, I knew that they not only shunned Ulysses when he was the Overseer, but had actively worked against him, ensuring he never found or gained access to their Arctic base. Perhaps I was being a touch petty, but it was quite entertaining to see Ulysses get so angry hearing about my allegiance with them.
Maybe just a pinch.
By the time the sun was rising, I could see the island we were headed for in the distance. Ulysses sheathed the blade and called for the anchor to be dropped. "Alright, Tayrin, let's mount your dragon and fly over, but we'll have to be careful. Even with your beast's short-range teleportation abilities, it will likely struggle to outpace the Mantaragon." "Oh, I'm not bringing Violet into this battle, it's too dangerous. I'll create a portal for us to reach the beach, and we can start the hunt from there." "If you don't have a dragon we can ride, then what good are you? You do recall me referring to this creature as a skybound Mantaragon, correct? It is a water dragon, but spends the majority of its waking hours in the sky. Will sooner become a meal for the Electrolantra than hunt the Mantaragon if we transport to the beach and walk around. Then I'll transport us near the top of the island's mountains, closer to the skies. And risk us being hurled off the side by a dragon and falling to our death? Brilliant, Janivar. Your strategy skills are exactly as adept as I'd expect."
Oh my god.
Okay there, boys. Soothe your boots. I think fate reckoned it'd make things easy for us today. Have a gander on yonder. We both looked and saw, a ways on ahead, just offshore of the island, the water was glowing and sparking bright green. Then, in the skies above that, was a black and blue creature, a bit larger than Violet, circling. It suddenly dove straight down towards the water. It moved so fast that a white shockwave plumed off it halfway through its dive.
Like a sonic
cannon of lightning suddenly exploded up out of the water straight towards the descending dragon. It spun around the sparking pillar and continued, diving straight into the water. It sprung back out seconds later, and leaping out of the water after it came the head of a beast that looked like a blend of an otter, a lion, and an eel. It snapped its jaws furiously, but missed every bite. Well, it looks like the Mantaragon has convinced the Electrolantra to fight it after all. That's about the size of it, and I think I see why. Look at the speedy boy's back. Darable handed me a spyglass, and I looked through.
What is
Clutched between what seemed like fleshy mandibles on the back of the Mantaragon's neck was an egg.
Oh.
I was shocked. How durable are the Electrolantra's eggs to stand crashing into the water that fast? Ulysses snatched the spyglass from me and looked through. Apparently quite strong and likely electricity-proof as well. but the Mantaragon could still crack it open if it chose to. We may be
Oh,
able to
damn.
retrieve it from the dragon if someone were willing to ride the... What are you doing, Tayrin? I'd stepped away and grabbed a long rope I saw sitting near some barrels. I tied it tightly around my waist, then walked over to Violet. I held it out to her, then chomped my teeth. She understood, opened her mouth, and bit down on the other end of the rope. I then began spinning the Overseer runes on my arm as I watched the two monsters brawl in the distance. Captain, I need you to do me a favor.
Okay.
When you see me
Okay.
grab the egg, please give Violet 2 pats on the side of her head. She'll then reel me back in. Alright, reel you back in from where, bud?
Oh,
I knew
portal!
he'd understand in a moment. I paused the spell I was casting with my runes just before finishing it, and watched for the Mantaragon to hold somewhere in the air. It was swooping all about, just above the water, dodging bolts of lightning, and the Lantra leaping out
He's gonna
at it,
make a
trying to
portal.
snatch it. Ulysses figured out what I was doing before Darable. This is probably the most moronic idea anybody has ever had. I simply smirked and said,
If it works and it's stupid, then it ain't stupid.
well, not if it works.
Okay, I actually like this thing, but it's still kind of an asshole. The Skybound... damn, I forgot what he said. Skybound Mantis
Finally,
something.
the Mantaragon stalled,
Mantaragon,
likely planning
thank
its
you.
next strike, and I finished my spell. A portal opened behind me and directly above the stalled dragon. I leapt into my portal and was suddenly falling through the sky above the Brawl. I landed on the dragon's neck and immediately wrapped my arms around the egg. It whipped its body around in shock and I was hurled off, but took the egg with me. I fell for only a moment, then felt a fierce yank against my waist that made me choke and I nearly dropped the egg, but did manage
that
to
was
keep hold.
close.
I was dragged upwards back through the portal, leapt to my feet on deck, and held out the egg towards Ulysses, with an admittedly smug grin. He simply shook his head. Luck isn't a factor you should so heavily
It's like, you still call this stupid?
rely on, Tayrin. Well, call my skills luck all you wish. It worked regardless. I said, closing and making a new portal. Whoever is willing to assist me, I'm going to the beach to return the egg and lure both beasts to ground, where I can fight them more easily. To my surprise, a dozen of the crew all circled around to join, including Darable, Ulysses, and Ogwaho. I thanked them all
Nice.
and stepped through the newly made portal. As others followed behind me onto the beach, I held up the egg and called out to the beasts that were now flying and swimming towards the loony Keener. Darable also whistled to summon Gretzky to the beach. The
Let's go.
Mantaragon turned and saw us first, and immediately changed course in our direction, with the Lantra then close behind. The Electro-Lantra suddenly shot a cannon of lightning at the Mantaragon. This time, it struck directly into the creature's back. The impact threw it off course, but the actual electricity now sparking off its body seemed to barely phase it. It was as if its thick
Of
skin
course.
had negated the effect, which I was actually quite happy to see. I handed the egg to Darable.
Oh, what if he tames both of them? Ooh,
You know where the Electro-Lantra's
okay.
nest is, correct? Does maple syrup go surprisingly well with poutine? I'm
Wait, what?
not sure, but I'll take that as an affirmative. Please take the egg back and do your best to show the Lantra that we mean it and its nest no harm. Ulysses and I will handle the Mantaragon. Darable and most of the crew then ran off with the egg, save for Ogwaho, who remained behind with 2 small daggers twirling in her hand. I nodded at her, understanding she'd want to be in on the fight to come. I then started making one more portal, as Ulysses said, "You should be going to return the egg, Tayrin. It would help you gain the creature's trust. Plus, what weaponry do you intend to use in this battle? You don't seem to be armed." I finished my newest portal, which went right into a shed I'd built behind my home. Inside, the walls, shelves, and admittedly even floors were covered in weaponry, from swords to axes to lances and bows. I stepped through and
Dude's got that Final Girl layout from Halloween. I can't remember the movie. I think it was just called Halloween.
looked around the shelves until finally I found my favorite bow and a set of very specific arrows. Ulysses glanced through the portal as I was coming back out. "By the moon, you hoard weapons like an armor-plated sky dragon hoards gold." He sounded judgmental, but I could tell he was also a bit impressed by the collection. I came back through the portal. You'd likely have a collection like this as well if you too were friends with a Kuznet. There are no better salespeople in our world.
Damn
I drew
right.
back an arrow and pointed it at the Mantaragon, now quickly approaching Darable and his crew. I fired well ahead of the creature, and it flew directly into the arrow, whose tip exploded in a flaring burst of light on impact. It spun out and nearly crashed to the beach, but recovered, just to have another of my arrows strike it in the side, flashing it again. This time, it closed its eyes prior to impact, clearly having learned quickly. It then did as I
Very
hoped and
intelligent.
started flying towards us. What are you doing? Are you trying to put on a light show for it? Where are your more lethal weapons? I'm not trying to kill it. Your plan and my plan are not the same here, Ulysses. The dragon got close and suddenly spread its maw wide, spitting a beam of near-freezing water towards me. I dove behind the open side of the portal.
Water.
The water struck the back of the portal and bounced off around us, making a spray of cold mist. Aguaho suddenly started running towards the ocean. I saw a furry buck-toothed head zipping through the water towards her. I wasn't sure what she was up to, but I called
The
out,
beaver?
"Please try not to land any fatal blows, Aguaho." She gave a nod as she ran, splashing through the water to meet Gretzky, who is now coming up on the shore.
Gretzky!
What do you mean, don't land any fatal blows? We're here to hunt this thing, aren't we? What are you doing? I smirked. We're not hunting it, Ulysses. We're testing it. Aguaho hopped onto Gretzky's massive tail and simply pointed up. The dire beaver then swung its tail up and she rocketed into the air, spinning gracefully with her arms tucked and legs together. When the dragon was near her, she spread her limbs to stop her spin, then hurled both her knives at the dragon. To my surprise, they were bound to thin wires, attached to her under her clothes by a harness. One dagger's blade bounced off the dragon's thick skin, but the other wrapped around one of the protuberances on its back that had once held the egg. Again, I was glad to see that even a blade thrown by a fierce warrior didn't pierce the dragon's skin. Aguaho then braced her body as the dragon soared past her and yanked her along with it. She started trying to climb the wire towards it, but the creature quickly turned and bit the wire, snapping it and dropping her. She splashed down into the water, safely enough. I smiled. Good, it's seeming to be as intelligent as I hoped. You see, Ulysses, I have no intention of trying to partner with the Leo Electrolantra. It may be powerful, but it also has eggs it needs to protect, soon to be children.
True.
I'm about to start leaving Violet behind on quests due to her own brewing young. I'd never take a mother away from its child to risk its life for my own means. The Lantra would likely not even be reliable anyhow, as motherhood will be its priority, and it could end up ignoring my summons to protect its children. But you did intrigue me when you spoke of the Montaragon. I took a few moments back on the ship to read on it further in your bestiary, and from what I read, paired with what I'm seeing here, it could be a perfect new mount and summon for me. I started spinning my Overseer runes again, but this time, not for a portal. I held my hand out toward the approaching dragon, trying to project a feeling into its own mind. It was a very specific one, and this was not one of my most refined skills, but I hoped for a creature hungry for battle with others, this would work. It opened its mouth wide again and water started spilling out as it readied to attack. But I held my ground, and finally, it slowed its flight. No water was projected at me. It dropped down to the sand before me and ran forward till its head was inches from my hand, and it stopped. It stared at me, swaying its head as if considering the feeling I was projecting. That's right, Skybound Montaragon. If you align yourself with me, I will take you to face the fiercest monsters you've ever seen. Monsters that you won't have to convince to fight you. They're looking for a fight, just as much as you are. It grinned more menacingly than I'd like from a creature ally of mine, but was clearly interested in facing the image of the creature I'd tried projecting into its head. That of Toralai's fire beast. It pressed its nose into my palm, and its head began glowing from my runes. It had agreed. I hereby align with this skybound Montaragon, and allow my consciousness to consider it another vessel. When it accepts my call, our souls temporarily unite as one. A golden orb of light shone from the center of the creature's chest, and from my own. I felt the connection made, and suddenly felt a stirring urge for a fight myself. Likely from feeling part of this creature's essence. Wow, would you look at that? You all became buds too, eh? I looked down the beach to see Darable riding on the head of the Electrolantra towards us.
Oh, shit.
It seemed returning the egg had gone even better than expected. The beast still snarled at the Montaragon before me as it approached, but I bowed to the electric beast, and, grudgingly rolling its eyes, the Montaragon followed suit. That's very impressive, Captain. I didn't expect the creature to take such a strong liking to you. Oh, sure thing, bud. All I had to do after returning the eggs was give this big girl a few swigs from my Mickey, he said, patting his pocket.
She's drunk.
Ain't no sane person or beastie out there that can resist some pure Canadian tree gold. Well, normally I'd expect someone to be carrying alcohol in the kind of flask Darable was referring to. I instantly knew that the captain was actually carrying a bottle of maple syrup.
Oh!
I'd have likely stayed to spend more time with
I was
Darabonna's
wrong.
crew, but if I was going to seal this alignment, I needed to show the Montaragon that I could find it some good fights, as promised. I said my goodbyes fairly quickly and thanked the crew for their aid, as they thanked me for helping make their travel route through these waters safe again. Ulysses had stepped into the woods to relieve himself, so before saying goodbyes to him, I went to try one last time getting a word out of Aguajo. Thank you especially for your help, Aguajo. I look forward to joining you in battle again someday against a proper foe. And I imagine I can trust you even more than the captain to keep Ulysses from doing anything too irresponsible. She shook my hand and still didn't say anything, but did glance around for a moment, before subtly pulling a pendant up that hung behind her shirt. On it was the very familiar symbol of the Slayers of Cursed Predators.
Oh,
My jaw fell slack as she nodded and quickly slid the pendant back away and walked off. Those Slayers really do have knights in the most unexpected places. If she ever revealed this allegiance to Ulysses, I hoped I would be there to see it. Finally, Ulysses returned and I told him I was off and thanked him, as genuinely as I could despite how frustrating he had been at times. I still think my plan to get the Electra launcher as an ally was superior, but the Montaragon is fast, durable, and possibly more reliable to be called on for a fight.
Yeah,
Well conceived, Taran.
Muzzle.
So what do you plan to take the fight
young.
first for training? Go big and attack something like a monolithic shin god? Actually, I think I'll take it to another world altogether. For one thing, I think in the worlds of some friends of mine, there are monsters that would pose a great challenge for it, and I've actually been curious to see if I can align with a monster from another world.
Now that is going to be awesome to see next week. Alright, man, what you got to say to finish this?
I'm really enjoying this new kick I'm on of doing more drawings with multiple characters in them. They're a little bit more time consuming to compose, but I think they're always worth it. Though I think I still like the drawing from the first episode in this series a bit better. So if you haven't seen the Summoner's Beasts, A Demon's Challenge, I recommend going back to that. Or you might want to check out my new series Mytholethal, which is 4 episodes in and is like this but is more mythology based. And is set in multiverse tales a very, very long time ago. Also, the Double Sea Beast drawing from this episode will be available on the Popcraft Studios Teespring store as a poster, and I've put a whole bunch of new stuff up there recently. Check it out if you feel like, but besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave people with today isn't even actually a quote, it's actually just a general person I learned about this week named Eric Wyenmeyer, who is a blind professional mountain climber. While blind, he climbed Mount Everest. Which of course is incredible, but someone like that I think is a great reminder, someone you can think about anytime you convince yourself that you're not capable of achieving something because of some perceived limitation you have. Think to yourself, is that limitation to achieve that thing bigger than being blind and trying to climb Mount Everest?
Oh yeah,
I'm guessing whatever limitation it is, you can overcome it. I hope that's inspiring, I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday. Goodbye.
Alright everyone, that's going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all of y'all next time when we flick back on. This is Fox, signing out. Peace.